know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. Rudy Wagner's fingers tightened around the doorframe of the master bedroom as he watched his wife methodically destroy their marriage. Each designer piece Mindy pulled from their shared closet represented another crack in their foundation, another betrayal that had led to this moment. You know what your problem is, Rudy? Mindy's manicured hands yanked a Saint Laurent blazer from its hanger, the metal scraping against the rod with a screech. You lack vision. You're content with this? She gestured dismissively at their bedroom, which most would consider luxurious by normal standards. Rudy's jaw clenched, his dark eyes following her movements as she stuffed the blazer into one of the 4 Louis Vuitton suitcases spread across their bed. Suitcases he'd purchased for her last Christmas. 3 years of marriage, and that's your profound insight? 3 wasted years, Mindy corrected, her voice dripping with contempt. She paused at her jewelry box, methodically removing pieces he'd given her over the years. Do you know what Cameron said when he showed me his summer house in the Hamptons? He said, "This is just the beginning." She turned to face him, her perfectly styled blonde hair swinging with the movement. When's the last time you said something like that to me? When's the last time you showed me anything but mediocrity? The mention of Cameron Douglas made Rudy's blood run cold. CEO of Douglas Technologies, Cameron had been Mindy's biggest client at her law firm for the past year. Rudy had noticed the late-night calls, the weekend emergency meetings, the sudden business trips. He confronted her 2 weeks ago, and her response had been to serve him divorce papers. A software developer, Mindy continued, her lip curling as she spat out the words like they tasted bitter. That's all you'll ever be. Writing code in your little cubicle at Microtech Solutions. Thinking a promotion to senior developer is something to celebrate. She laughed, the sound hollow and cruel. Do you know what Cameron's net worth is? Do you have any idea what kind of life he's offering me? Rudy's mind flashed back to their days at Boston University. Her ambitious pre-law student, him juggling computer science classes with 2 part-time jobs. He believed in her then, worked extra shifts at the campus IT department and a local Best Buy to help put her through law school. They lived in a cramped studio apartment, sharing instant noodles and dreams of the future. I supported you through law school, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Every internship, every networking event, every time you needed new clothes to look the part. I was there. Oh, please. Mindy rolled her eyes, moving to her vanity. You want a medal for doing what any half-decent husband would do? The difference is, other men would have used that as a stepping stone, not an excuse to stay comfortable in mediocrity. She pulled off her wedding ring, the diamond catching the light as she tossed it onto the dresser with a metallic clink. Cameron Douglas is offering me everything you couldn't. Mansions, yachts, a real future. Not this suburban nightmare. Rudy stepped into the room, his presence filling the space with a tension that made Mindy pause momentarily in her packing. You'll regret this, he said, each word carefully measured, controlled. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. For a split second, something flickered across Mindy's face, uncertainty, perhaps fear. But it vanished quickly, replaced by the same cold disdain she'd worn like armor these past weeks. The only thing I regret, she said, zipping up the last suitcase with decisive finality, is wasting 3 years with a loser. She pulled out her phone, perfectly manicured nails tapping out a message. The movers will be here in an hour for the rest of my things. I'm sure you can handle the divorce papers on your own. Unless that's too complex for your coding brain to process? She smirked, lifting one of the suitcases. Cameron's driver is waiting outside. Don't worry about helping with the bags. Philippe can manage them. Rudy stood perfectly still as she wheeled 2 suitcases past him. He caught a whiff of her expensive perfume, Clive Christian, another gift he'd bought her, and felt his hands curl into fists at his sides. The muscles in his jaw worked as he watched her pause at the doorway. You know what the funny thing is? Mindy said, glancing back at him. When we met, I thought you had potential. I thought you'd grow, evolve, become something more. Instead, you're exactly the same person you were in college. Safe, predictable, ordinary. She shook her head. Cameron built an empire. What have you built, Rudy? What mark will you leave on the world? The sound of her heels clicking down the hallway echoed through the house, followed by the thud of the front door closing. Rudy moved to the window, watching as a uniformed driver loaded her bags into a sleek black Mercedes S-Class. Mindy didn't look back as she slipped into the back seat, her phone already pressed to her ear, probably calling Cameron to gloat about her clean getaway. As the car pulled away, Rudy's reflection stared back at him from the window. His angular features set in stone, dark eyes burning with an intensity that would have made Mindy think twice about her words had she bothered to really look at him today. He walked to the dresser, picking up the discarded wedding ring. The diamond caught the light again, but instead of beauty, all he saw was decay. He pulled open the top drawer and dropped the ring inside, his decision already crystallizing in his mind. Mindy thought she knew him? She'd barely scratched the surface. She wanted to talk about potential? About leaving marks on the world? He'd show her what real potential looked like. He'd show her what happened to people who underestimated him, who betrayed him. Rudy pulled out his phone, scrolling through his contacts until he found the name he wanted. The line rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Sam? I need you to come over. We could have initial funding within a month. Full infrastructure and team build-out within 6 months. Jerome signaled for the check. The question is, Mr. Wagner, what's your real goal here? Rudy's fingers traced the edge of his untouched water glass. Let's say I have a vision of my own, one that requires certain pieces to be in place, and those pieces would coincidentally align with Douglas Technologies' market position. Jerome's smile was knowing. You wouldn't be the first entrepreneur motivated by personal vengeance. But if we're going to work together, I need to know you can separate emotion from strategy. The waiter returned with the check, which Jerome signed without looking at the total. Rudy waited until they were alone again before speaking. 3 months ago, my wife told me I lacked vision, he said, his voice carrying a quiet intensity that made Jerome lean forward slightly. She said I'd never build anything meaningful, never leave my mark on the world. She thought she knew me, my limits, my capabilities, my ambitions. His smile was razor-sharp. She was wrong. Jerome studied him for a long moment. Sterling and Ross doesn't back revenge fantasies, he said carefully. We back viable businesses with strong potential for market dominance. Why can't it be both? Rudy stood, adjusting his perfectly tailored suit. The best revenge isn't destruction, Mr. Fisher. It's success. Massive, undeniable, industry-changing success. Jerome rose as well, extending his hand. Call me Jerome. I'll have my office draw up the preliminary paperwork. We should move quickly. Opportunities like this don't stay secret for long. Rudy's handshake was firm, confident. One more thing, he said. I want Sam Nunez as my head of operations. He's been with this project from the beginning, and I trust him. Done. Jerome pulled out his business card, handing it to Rudy. Welcome to the big leagues, Mr. Wagner. I hope you're ready for what comes next. As they left the restaurant, Rudy paused on the sidewalk, watching Jerome's town car pull away. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Another glossy article about Mindy and Cameron's perfect life, their perfect future, their perfect plans. He archived the alert without reading it. Let them enjoy their moment in the spotlight. Let them think they'd written him off as a footnote in their story. His time would come, and when it did, they'd learn what real vision looked like. Rudy hailed a cab, his mind already racing with plans, strategies, and the precise calculations of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The game was just beginning, and he intended to play it to win, no matter the cost. Have work to do. The fluorescent lights of Microtech Solutions' office buzzed overhead as Sam Nunez made his way through the maze of cubicles, 2 cups of coffee clutched in his hands. It was well past midnight, but he could see the glow of a monitor from Rudy's workspace, just like every night for the past 3 months. You're going to kill yourself, man, Sam said, setting one of the cups down next to Rudy's keyboard. Lines of code reflected off his friend's glasses, his fingers moving across the keyboard with mechanical precision. When's the last time you went home? I am home, Rudy replied without looking up, his voice flat. Empty energy drink cans surrounded his workspace like metallic sentries. The cleaning crew's starting to charge me rent. Sam pulled up a chair, studying his friend's profile. Dark circles shadowed Rudy's eyes, and his usually clean-shaven face sported several days' worth of stubble. His shirt, once crisp and professional, was wrinkled from too many hours hunched over the keyboard. "You saw it, didn't you?" Sam asked carefully, knowing the answer but needing to address it. "The globe?" Rudy's fingers paused over the keyboard for a fraction of a second before resuming their relentless pace. Society pages, front and center. Tech Titan Wed's rising legal star. Nice alliteration, don't you think? The wedding photos had been everywhere, Mindy radiant in a custom Vera Wang gown, Cameron Douglas beaming like a man who just acquired his newest trophy. The ceremony at the Boston Harbor Hotel had been the social event of the season, with politicians, CEOs, and celebrities in attendance. And the honeymoon photos? Rudy continued, his voice taking on an edge that made Sam shift uncomfortably. Very tasteful. Nothing says true love like posting every moment of your Maldives getaway on Instagram. The infinity pool shots were particularly inspired. "Rudy," Sam started, but his friend cut him off. "Did you see the interview?" Rudy's fingers flew faster across the keyboard, the clacking growing more intense. "The one where she talked about finding her soulmate and her biggest client? About how sometimes you have to follow your heart, even if it means breaking another." He laughed, the sound devoid of humor. Very poetic. The comments section loved it. Sam took a sip of his coffee, choosing his next words carefully. "You can't keep doing this to yourself. 18-hour days, living on caffeine and spite. It's not sustainable. You don't understand what I'm building here, Sam." Rudy finally turned away from his screen, his eyes fever-bright with exhaustion and determination. "This isn't just another piece of software. This platform will revolutionize financial analysis. It can predict market trends with 93% accuracy, identify patterns human analysts would miss, process millions of data points in seconds, and this has nothing to do with proving something to Mindy?" Sam asked, raising an eyebrow. Rudy's expression hardened. "This has everything to do with proving something, just not to her. To myself. To everyone who ever looked at me and saw nothing but a coding monkey in a cubicle." Sam leaned back in his chair, studying the lines of code on Rudy's screen. After 15 years of friendship, he knew when Rudy had locked onto something significant. They'd met in their first computer science class at Boston University, bonding over late-night debugging sessions and shared dreams of building something meaningful. "My cousin Jerome," Sam said after a moment of contemplation. "He works for Sterling and Ross, the venture capital firm." Rudy's attention sharpened. Sam nodded. "They're always looking for the next big thing in fintech. Jerome's been bugging me to introduce him to any promising developers." He pulled out his phone. "Let me set up a meeting." "Sam, look." Sam cut him off. "You want to prove something? Fine, but do it right. You've got something special here. I can see it. But you need backing, connections, infrastructure." He started typing out a message. "Jerome's good people. He'll see what I see." Rudy turned back to his screen, but his typing had slowed. "When?" "Tomorrow. Lunch." Sam stood up, gathering his empty coffee cup. "And you're going home now. Shower, shave, sleep in an actual bed. You're not meeting my cousin looking like a revenge-coding hermit." A ghost of a smile touched Rudy's lips, the first Sam had seen in months. "Revenge-coding hermit? That's a new one." "Yeah, well, I'm running out of ways to tell you you look like shit." Sam paused at the edge of the cubicle. "This could be big, Rudy, but you need to be smart about it. Strategic." Rudy saved his work and began shutting down his computer. "Trust me," he said, his voice taking on a tone Sam had never heard before. Cold, calculated, certain. "Strategy is exactly what I have in mind." The private dining room at Moo Restaurant in Beacon Hill hummed with quiet conversation and the gentle clink of expensive flatware against bone china. Jerome Fisher maintained his relaxed smile as he studied the man across the table, mentally revising several assumptions he'd made before this meeting. Sam had described his friend as brilliant but intense, driven but possibly unstable after his divorce. Jerome had expected someone desperate, maybe a bit unhinged, the type of developer who thought they'd built the next Facebook in their basement. Instead, Rudy Wagner presented as controlled, focused, and absolutely certain of his creation's value. Walk me through it again, Jerome said, setting down his fork. The remains of a perfectly cooked Wagyu steak sat forgotten on his plate. The platform integrates with existing trading systems? Rudy nodded, his own meal barely touched. Seamlessly. But that's just the foundation. The real innovation is in the predictive analytics engine. He pulled out a tablet, sliding it across the table. These are test results from the last 6 months. The algorithm identified market trends weeks before human analysts caught on. Jerome scrolled through the data, his eyebrows rising incrementally with each page. 15 years in venture capital had taught him to spot the difference between hopeful projections and solid results. These numbers weren't just good, they were revolutionary. Who else has seen this? He asked, his mind already running through potential competitors, market positions, exit strategies. Besides Sam? No one. Rudy's dark eyes held Jerome's gaze. I'm very particular about who I trust with my work. A waiter appeared silently at Jerome's elbow. Would either gentleman care for dessert? Coffee, Jerome replied. And get Bobby Yates on the phone for me. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Rudy's expression remained neutral, but Jerome caught the slight narrowing of his eyes at the mention of Bobby's name. Bobby Yates is a legend in Boston tech, Jerome explained, though he suspected Rudy already knew this. Built 3 companies from scratch, sold them for billions. These days he's semi-retired, but he still mentors select projects. He smiled. Projects like yours. I appreciate the interest, Rudy said carefully, but I'm not looking to sell my platform to the highest bidder. I have specific goals in mind. Jerome leaned back as the waiter returned with his coffee. Let me guess, this has something to do with Cameron Douglas? The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Sam's been talking? Sam didn't have to. Jerome stirred his coffee, the silver spoon making no sound against the cup. I do my homework, Mr. Wagner. Your ex-wife's very public marriage to one of Boston's most prominent CEOs made quite a splash. The timing of your platform's development isn't exactly subtle. He expected denial, maybe embarrassment. Instead, Rudy's lips curved into a smile that never reached his eyes. Then you understand why I'm particular about my partners. Perfectly. Jerome set down his spoon. Sterling and Ross isn't interested in quick flips or passive investments. We build empires. He pulled out his phone as it buzzed. Ah, Bobby's free. Perfect timing. He put the phone on speaker and placed it on the table. Bobby? Jerome Fisher. I'm sitting with someone you need to meet. This better be good, Jerry. Bobby Yates's gravelly voice filled the private dining room. I was about to tee off. Trust me, your golf game can wait. Jerome nodded at Rudy. I'm with Rudy Wagner. He's developed a financial analysis platform that's showing 93% accuracy in market predictions. A low whistle came through the speaker. No shit? Send me the specs. Jerome forwarded the data from the tablet. The line went quiet for several minutes as Bobby reviewed the information. Finally, his voice returned, carrying a note of genuine interest. Kid, you've got something special here. But you need to think bigger. Bigger? Rudy asked, his voice carrying an edge of calculated curiosity. Much bigger. This isn't just about beating the market. This is about changing how the entire game is played. Papers rustled in the background. Jerry, what's Sterling and Ross's position on this? Jerome met Rudy's gaze across the table. We're very interested in taking a significant position. Subject to due diligence, of course. Good. Bobby's voice took on a decisive tone. Kid, if you're serious about this, I want in. Not just as an investor, as a mentor. You've got the technical brilliance, but the tech world isn't just about code. It's about strategy, timing, knowing when to strike and when to wait. Rudy's expression remained composed, but Jerome caught the glint of something dangerous in his eyes. I'm a quick study, Mr. Yates. Bobby, the older man corrected. And I believe you are. Jerry, set up a proper meeting for next week. My office. The line went dead. Jerome pocketed his phone, studying Rudy with newfound respect. Bobby Yates doesn't waste time on lost causes. If he's interested, this could move very quickly. How quickly? We could have initial funding within a month. Full infrastructure and team build-out within 6 months. Jerome signaled for the check. The question is, Mr. Wagner, what's your real goal here? Rudy's fingers traced the edge of his untouched water glass. Let's say I have a vision of my own, one that requires certain pieces to be in place, and those pieces would coincidentally align with Douglas Technologies' market position. Jerome's smile was knowing. You wouldn't be the first entrepreneur motivated by personal vengeance. But if we're going to work together, I need to know you can separate emotion from strategy. The waiter returned with the check, which Jerome signed without looking at the total. Rudy waited until they were alone again before speaking. 3 months ago, my wife told me I lacked vision, he said, his voice carrying a quiet intensity that made Jerome lean forward slightly. She said I'd never build anything meaningful, never leave my mark on the world. She thought she knew me, my limits, my capabilities, my ambitions. His smile was razor-sharp. She was wrong. Jerome studied him for a long moment. Sterling and Ross doesn't back revenge fantasies, he said carefully. We back viable businesses with strong potential for market dominance. Why can't it be both? Rudy stood, adjusting his perfectly tailored suit. The best revenge isn't destruction, Mr. Fisher. It's success. Massive, undeniable, industry-changing success. Jerome rose as well, extending his hand. Call me Jerome. I'll have my office draw up the preliminary paperwork. We should move quickly. Opportunities like this don't stay secret for long. Rudy's handshake was firm, confident. One more thing, he said. I want Sam Nunez as my head of operations. He's been with this project from the beginning, and I trust him. Done. Jerome pulled out his business card, handing it to Rudy. Welcome to the big leagues, Mr. Wagner. I hope you're ready for what comes next. As they left the restaurant, Rudy paused on the sidewalk, watching Jerome's town car pull away. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Another glossy article about Mindy and Cameron's perfect life, their perfect future, their perfect plans. He archived the alert without reading it. Let them enjoy their moment in the spotlight. Let them think they'd written him off as a footnote in their story. His time would come, and when it did, they'd learn what real vision looked like. Rudy hailed a cab, his mind already racing with plans, strategies, and the precise calculations of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The game was just beginning, and he intended to play it to win, no matter the cost. The 48th floor of the newly christened Wagner Analytics headquarters hummed with purpose. 3 years had transformed Rudy's vision from lines of code into an empire that commanded respect throughout Boston's financial district. The company's growth had been meteoric, from a small team working out of a shared office space to over 300 employees occupying prime real estate in the heart of the city. Sam Nunez surveyed the trading floor from his office, watching analysts and developers work in perfect synchronization. As head of operations, he'd helped build this machine from the ground up, selecting each piece with surgical precision. The platform they developed had exceeded even their most optimistic projections, becoming an essential tool for hedge funds and investment banks across the country. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Nunez, Mr. Wagner would like to see you in his office. Sam found Rudy standing behind his desk, studying multiple screens displaying market data and company analytics. The past 3 years had changed his friend. Gone was the disheveled developer working 18-hour days in a cubicle. In his place stood a man who commanded attention, whose mere presence made people straighten their spines and choose their words carefully. You've seen the reports? Rudy asked without turning around. About Douglas Technologies? Sam closed the door behind him. Their stock dropped another 12% this morning. The vulnerability in their cloud security system is worse than initially reported. 8 major clients have terminated their contracts in the past month. Rudy's voice carried a note of calculated satisfaction. Their chief security officer resigned yesterday. No official statement yet, but our sources say he's cooperating with federal investigators. Sam moved closer to the screens, studying the data. Cameron's getting desperate. He's trying to raise capital by selling off non-core assets, but nobody's buying. The market smells blood. And Mindy? Rudy finally turned, his dark eyes gleaming with predatory interest. Promoted to general counsel 6 months ago, Sam pulled up another screen. She's been working overtime trying to contain the damage, but he hesitated. But our surveillance team intercepted something interesting. Sam retrieved a tablet from his briefcase. Emails between Mindy and several of Cameron's competitors. She's been feeding him insider information for years, technical specifications, bid details, customer lists. The kind of information that wouldn't be available through normal channels. Rudy took the tablet, scrolling through the evidence with methodical precision. Corporate espionage. How fitting. His lips curved into a cold smile. Have you shown this to anyone else? Only our most trusted analysts. Bobby Yates suggested we bring in someone specific to handle this aspect. Sam pulled up another file. Jeanette Ritter, former prosecutor turned corporate lawyer. She's got a reputation for being, he searched for the right word, ruthless. Rudy supplied. I was going to say effective. She's never lost a major case, and she's known for turning evidence into weapons. Bobby says she's been looking for the right opportunity to take on Cameron Douglas. Rudy studied Jeanette's profile. Set up a meeting. And Sam? He handed back the tablet. Make sure our own security is airtight. The moment we move on this, Cameron will try to retaliate. Already done. Bobby's team does weekly penetration testing. Our systems are locked down tighter than Fort Knox. Good. Rudy turned back to his screens. Because we're not just going to expose them, Sam. We're going to take everything. Sam recognized the tone. It was the same one he'd heard in that private dining room 3 years ago, when Rudy had laid out his vision to Jerome Fisher. Back then, some part of Sam had wondered if his friend's ambitions were fueled purely by revenge. Now he understood revenge was just the catalyst. What Rudy had built was something far more significant. There's something else, Sam said. Cameron's board is getting nervous. They've hired Bernadette Short as a special advisor. The corporate raider? Rudy's interest sharpened. They must be truly desperate. She's got a reputation for protecting companies from hostile takeovers. Some people call her the corporate shield. Every shield has its weak points. Rudy pulled up new data on his screens. Have our analysts compile everything we have on her past cases. I want to know her playbook inside and out. Already in progress. Sam headed for the door, then paused. Rudy, are you sure about this? Once we start down this road, I've been sure since the day Mindy walked out that door. Rudy's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. She and Cameron thought they were writing the ending to their perfect story. They forgot one thing. What's that? Every story has a villain. They just didn't realize which role they were playing. After Sam left, Rudy studied the city skyline, his empire's reflection overlaying the view of Boston's financial district. 3 years ago, Mindy had sneered at his potential, had dismissed him as nothing more than a coding monkey in a cubicle. Now his platform dictated market movements, his algorithms shaped investment strategies for the biggest players in finance. His phone buzzed, Bobby Yates requesting a meeting to discuss acquisition targets. Another piece falling into place. Rudy had spent 3 years building his strength, assembling his resources, positioning his pieces on the board. Now it was time to show Cameron and Mindy exactly what kind of future he'd built. Jeanette Ritter's reputation preceded her like a razor's edge. She sat in Wagner Analytics conference room, impeccably dressed in a Tom Ford suit that spoke of both wealth and precision, her silver hair styled in a severe bob that matched her sharp features. The evidence of corporate espionage was spread before her in meticulous detail. Well, she said, closing the last file with deliberate care. This is quite the smoking gun you've uncovered, Mr. Wagner. Rudy sat at the head of the conference table, Bobby Yates and Sam flanking him like seasoned generals. Can you use it? Oh, I can do more than use it. Jeanette's smile was all teeth and tactical advantage. This level of corporate espionage, combined with the security vulnerabilities in their main product, Douglas Technologies isn't just vulnerable. It's a wound waiting to be exploited. We need this handled perfectly, Bobby interjected. Cameron's got friends in high places. So do I. Jeanette pulled out her own tablet. And unlike Mrs. Douglas, I understand the difference between gathering intelligence and breaking federal law. She turned to Rudy. You want to take the company? Every last share. Then we do this my way. Clean, clinical, by the book. She began typing. First, we need to expand your team. I want young Bird as our compliance officer. The former SEC investigator? Sam asked. The very same. He's been consulting for private firms since leaving the commission. More importantly, he knows where all the bodies are buried in the tech sector. Jeanette looked up. We'll also need Rita Hayden for PR. Bobby nodded approvingly. The media whisperer. She handled the Morgan Technologies merger last year. Exactly. When we move, we need to control the narrative completely. Rita's the best in the business at steering public opinion. Jeanette turned back to Rudy. This has to be perfect. One misstep, and Cameron's lawyers will be all over us with injunctions and countersuits. Money's no object, Rudy stated. Whatever resources you need, they're yours. Good. Because we're not just going to win. We're going to make it impossible for them to fight back. Jeanette began outlining her strategy, her words precise as surgical instruments. First, we use Wagner Analytics platform to predict and counter every possible defense they might mount. Your algorithms give us a significant advantage there. Sam pulled up market projections on the main screen. We've been running scenarios for weeks. The platform shows their stock dropping another 20% once the full extent of their security issues becomes public. Perfect. That's when we start acquiring their competitors. Jeanette made more notes. Bobby, how many of Douglas's rivals do you have relationships with? Half a dozen major players. 3 of them are already interested in potential deals. Lock them down. Every acquisition strengthens our position and weakens Cameron's. She turned back to Rudy. Meanwhile, I'll prepare the legal groundwork. When we move, it'll be with overwhelming force. Multiple fronts. No room for escape. What about Mindy? Sam asked carefully. Jeanette's smile turned predatory. Mrs. Douglas made a critical error when she decided to play corporate spy. The evidence you've gathered doesn't just implicate Douglas Technologies. It proves she personally facilitated the theft of trade secrets. When this breaks, she won't just be fighting to save the company. She'll be fighting to stay out of prison. Rudy's expression remained impassive, but something dark flickered in his eyes. She always was ambitious. Ambition without wisdom is just greed with a better wardrobe. Jeanette gathered her files. I'll have contracts for Young and Rita by tomorrow. Once they're on board, we move to phase 2. Which is? Bobby asked. We start hunting. Jeanette stood, smoothing her jacket. Mr. Wagner, when I'm done, you won't just own Douglas Technologies. You'll own everything Cameron and his wife thought they could take from you. After she left, Bobby turned to Rudy. She's expensive. She's worth it. Agreed. Bobby studied his protege thoughtfully. 3 years ago, when Jerome first called me about your platform, I thought I was just backing another promising startup. I didn't realize I was helping forge a weapon. Not a weapon, Rudy corrected. An instrument of justice. Sam checked his phone as it buzzed. Young Bird's assistant just confirmed he's interested in meeting. Rita Hayden's team wants to schedule a call for tomorrow morning. Set it up. Rudy stood, his presence filling the room with quiet authority. It's time to show Cameron and Mindy exactly what a software developer can build. The next 2 months moved with the precision of a master chess player positioning their endgame. Young Bird, with his steel trap mind and encyclopedic knowledge of SEC regulations, methodically built their case. Rita Hayden worked her media connections, planting seeds of doubt about Douglas Technologies' stability without ever seeming to target them directly. Cameron's response came swiftly. Bernadette Short, the corporate raider turned defender, launched an aggressive strategy to shore up Douglas's defenses. She orchestrated share buybacks, initiated cost-cutting measures, and attempted to reassure major clients about the security issues. She's good, Young commented during one late-night strategy session. The former SEC investigator's lean frame was bent over market reports, his wire-rimmed glasses reflecting data streams. But she's fighting yesterday's war. Rita nodded, her PR experts eye-catching the patterns. Every move they make, we've already predicted and countered. Wagner Analytics platform is giving us a tactical advantage they can't match. Through Bobby's connections, Rudy began acquiring Douglas's competitors with surgical precision. Each purchase was structured to appear independent, unconnected to any larger strategy. But piece by piece, The noose tightened. Silicon Valley Solutions just accepted our offer, Sam reported one morning, entering Rudy's office with fresh acquisition documents. That's the third major competitor this month. How did Cameron react? Mindy tried to block it with regulatory challenges. Jeanette shut her down in less than 6 hours. Sam's smile held a touch of admiration. I almost feel sorry for them. They don't realize they're not just fighting us. They're fighting an algorithm that can predict their every move. Don't feel sorry for them, Rudy replied, his voice carrying the weight of 3 years' calculated patience. They chose this path the moment they decided to underestimate me. The pieces continued to fall into place. Young's team uncovered more evidence of corporate espionage, each discovery adding ammunition to their arsenal. Rita's media strategy began bearing fruit, with technology blogs and financial news outlets raising questions about Douglas Technologies' future. Bernadette Short fought back with everything in her considerable arsenal. She brought in crisis management teams, launched aggressive PR campaigns, and tried to orchestrate emergency mergers with friendly companies. But at every turn, she found herself outmaneuvered by an opponent who seemed to anticipate her every move. She's getting desperate, Jeanette observed during a strategy meeting, watching Douglas's latest press conference. Look at her body language. She knows she's losing. Cameron's board is getting nervous, Young added. 3 directors have quietly sold large blocks of shares in the past week. The vultures can smell blood in the water. Mindy, now serving as Douglas's legal counsel, worked overtime trying to stem the tide. But her legal maneuvers, once so effective, found themselves consistently thwarted by Jeanette's superior strategy and Wagner Analytics' predictive capabilities. It's almost poetry, Rita remarked, watching another of Mindy's injunction attempts fail. She's fighting with the same tactics that used to work for her, not realizing the game has completely changed. The final piece fell into place when Bobby secured their largest acquisition yet, Quantum Security Systems, Douglas's biggest rival in the cloud security space. The purchase sent shockwaves through the industry and caused Douglas's stock to plummet further. They're ready to fall, Sam reported, bringing the latest market analysis to Rudy's office. One more push, and the whole house of cards comes down. Rudy stood at his desk, studying the empire he'd built. Wagner Analytics had grown beyond anyone's expectations, its platform revolutionizing how markets were analyzed and predicted. But more than that, it had become the instrument of his carefully orchestrated revenge. Send out the notices, he instructed. It's time for the board to meet. As his team dispersed to make final preparations, Rudy allowed himself a moment of reflection. 3 years ago, Mindy had walked out of their life, believing she was trading up for a better future. She'd seen him as nothing more than a stepping stone, a chapter to be closed on her way to greater things. Now he would show her and Cameron exactly what kind of future he'd built. One where their perfect world would crumble, piece by carefully calculated piece. The time for waiting was over. Tomorrow, the real game would begin. The timing was impeccable, 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, when markets opened and traders settled into their desks. Wagner Analytics, backed by Sterling and Ross and a consortium of strategic investors, launched their hostile takeover bid for Douglas Technologies. Cameron Douglas was in the middle of his morning executive briefing when his CFO burst into the conference room, face ashen. Sir, you need to see this immediately. The offering documents landed on the table with a decisive thud. Cameron's hands trembled slightly as he read through the terms, his usual polished demeanor cracking with each page. Get the board here. Now, he barked at his assistant. And someone find my wife. Mindy arrived 20 minutes later, her Hermes scarf slightly askew, a small but telling break in her typically perfect appearance. She grabbed the documents, her legal training kicking in as she scanned the contents. This can't be happening, she whispered, then caught herself as other board members began filing into the emergency meeting. Her mask of professional confidence slipped back into place, but her knuckles were white as she gripped her Mont Blanc pen. Cameron paced at the head of the boardroom table, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the marble floor. They can't do this, he shouted, turning to Mindy. Find a way to stop it. I'm trying to reach Bernadette, Mindy said, her fingers flying over her phone's keyboard. But Wagner's team has filed injunctions blocking our most obvious defensive moves. It's like they knew exactly what we'd. Her voice cut off as breaking news alerts began flooding their phones. Young Bird's meticulously gathered evidence of corporate espionage had been strategically leaked to select journalists. CNBC was already running the story. Bloomberg had a detailed exposé ready to go. The Wall Street Journal's investigation painted a damning picture of systematic trade secret theft. The stock's in free fall, the CFO reported, staring at his trading terminal, down 30% and still dropping. Trading might be halted if this continues. Impossible, Cameron sputtered. We have fail-safes, contingencies, all neutralized, Bernadette Short interrupted, striding into the room with a stack of reports. Wagner's team filed simultaneous actions in multiple jurisdictions. Every defensive strategy we prepared has been preemptively blocked. How? Cameron slammed his fist on the table. How could they possibly know? The platform, Mindy whispered, realization dawning on her face. His financial analysis platform. We thought it was just market prediction, but he's been using it to... She trailed off, the full scope of Rudy's strategy finally becoming clear. Bernadette spread documents across the table. Wagner Analytics hasn't just been preparing for this day. They've been simulating every possible response we might make. Their algorithms predicted our defensive strategies before we even developed them. The board members exchanged worried glances. These were experienced business leaders, people who had weathered countless corporate storms. But this was different. This wasn't just a hostile takeover. It was a perfectly orchestrated assault on every front simultaneously. What about our major shareholders? Cameron demanded. Already jumping ship, the CFO replied. The corporate espionage evidence, it's comprehensive. Nobody wants to be associated with. It's all lies. Cameron roared. Manufactured evidence. We'll sue for defamation, for market manipulation, for what, Mr. Douglas? Jeanette Ritter's voice cut through the chaos as she entered the boardroom, flanked by her legal team. Please, do elaborate on your defense strategy. I'm particularly interested in how you'll explain Mrs. Douglas's emails to your competitors' technical teams. Mindy's face went pale. She'd used private servers, encrypted communications, cutouts, and proxies. There was no way they could have. Amazing what a properly motivated SEC investigator can uncover, Jeanette continued, nodding to young Bird as he joined her. Especially when provided with sophisticated data analysis tools and, shall we say, a comprehensive understanding of corporate malfeasance. Get out. Cameron pointed at the door. This is a private board meeting. Actually, one of the board members spoke up. Ms. Ritter was invited. By me. Others around the table nodded. In light of these revelations, the board has a fiduciary duty to consider all options. Options? Cameron laughed incredulously. I built this company. I am this company. And you've destroyed its value through mismanagement and illegal activities, another board member countered. Our stock is in free fall, our major clients are fleeing, and we're facing potential federal investigations. The Wagner Analytics offer includes provisions protecting the board from shareholder lawsuits. Jeanette added smoothly. Quite generous terms, actually. My client believes in facilitating smooth transitions. Mindy stood up, her legal instincts screaming for damage control. We can fight this. The evidence won't hold up in court. We can. Mrs. Douglas, Young interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of his SEC experience. I suggest you contact a criminal defense attorney. Immediately. The board meeting devolved into chaos after that. Cameron alternated between threats and desperate bargaining. Mindy tried to mount legal arguments that crumbled against Jeanette's superior preparation. Board members huddled with their personal attorneys, reading the writing on the wall. And through it all, Wagner Analytics stock continued to rise as Douglas Technologies plummeted. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of emergency meetings, desperate phone calls, and crumbling defenses. Cameron's empire, built over decades of aggressive expansion and cutthroat tactics, was unraveling thread by thread. Bernadette Short sat in her office, reviewing the latest market data with growing admiration for her opponent's strategy. Every move they'd planned, every countermeasure they'd prepared, had been anticipated and neutralized before they could even implement them. Her phone buzzed, a private number she recognized. Have you made your decision? Rudy Wagner's voice was calm, controlled. Your offer is compelling. Bernadette's eyes flickered to the contract on her desk. A senior position at Wagner Analytics, with compensation that made her Douglas Technologies salary look like pocket change. You recognize a winning side when you see one, Rudy said. That's why you've survived so long in this business. Cameron won't survive this. It wasn't a question. That was never the plan. Bernadette signed the contract with a flourish. I'll see you Monday morning. Across town, Cameron was holding court in his penthouse office, surrounded by the remnants of his executive team. Empty coffee cups and discarded takeout containers testified to hours of desperate strategizing. The Singapore investors, his CFO began, pulled out an hour ago. Mindy's voice was hoarse from hours of emergency calls. They've seen the evidence. Nobody's willing to touch us. Evidence that shouldn't exist. Cameron hurled a crystal tumbler against the wall. You assured me those communications were secure. They were. Mindy's composure finally cracked. Everything was routed through private servers, encrypted. Yet somehow your ex-husband has copies of everything. Cameron's face was mottled with rage. Every email, every technical specification you passed to me, every piece of insider information that helped us crush our competitors. Don't you dare pin this all on me, Mindy snarled. You were the one who wanted those trade secrets. You were the one who… Enough. Their general counsel interrupted. This conversation needs to stop. Now, given the likelihood of criminal charges, anything you say to each other could be… Criminal charges? Mindy's laugh held an edge of hysteria. This morning we were discussing expansion plans. Now we're talking about criminal charges? The evidence young Bird leaked? The general counsel spread his hands helplessly. It's comprehensive. Federal prosecutors are already involved. The SEC. Get out. Cameron's voice was deadly quiet. All of you. Out. As his team filed out, Cameron stared at the cityscape that had once been his domain. His phone buzzed with a message from his biggest shareholder. They were supporting Wagner's takeover bid. One by one, the pillars of his empire were crumbling. Mindy retreated to her office, her perfect world dissolving around her. She picked up her phone, scrolling to Rudy's number. Her finger hovered over the dial button. He won't answer. Her assistant's voice made her jump. Trust me, I've tried. Every call gets routed to Ms. Ritter's office. Mindy's hand dropped to her desk. Of course he wouldn't answer. This was what she created. This ruthless, unstoppable force that now threatened to destroy everything she'd built. She opened her browser, searching for news about Wagner Analytics. The company's rise had been meteoric, its platform revolutionizing financial analysis. And she'd walked away from it all, convinced she'd found something better. Her phone buzzed with a notification. The board was calling another emergency meeting. The subject line made her blood run cold. Vote on Wagner Analytics acquisition offer. The Douglas Technologies boardroom had witnessed countless power plays over the years, but none quite like this. Rudy Wagner's entrance was understated yet commanding, each step carrying the weight of calculated victory. Cameron sat at the far end of the table, his usual bespoke suit looking somehow diminished. Beside him, Mindy gripped her legal pad like a shield, her couture dress and perfect makeup unable to hide the defeat in her eyes. The board's decision was unanimous. The chairman announced, sliding documents across the polished table. Douglas Technologies accepts Wagner Analytics acquisition offer, effective immediately. Rudy took his seat, Cameron's seat, at the head of the table. Thank you, gentlemen. I assure you, this transition will be smooth. His voice carried absolute authority. Ms. Ritter will handle the paperwork. Jeanette began distributing documents with practiced efficiency. Mr. Douglas, you'll find your resignation agreement on page 3. The terms are non-negotiable. Cameron's hands shook as he reached for the papers. This company is my life's work, he whispered. Rudy corrected quietly. The board has accepted your resignation, effective immediately. His gaze shifted to Mindy, who seemed to shrink under his scrutiny. As for you, Mrs. Douglas, the evidence of your involvement in corporate espionage has been turned over to the SEC. I suggest you contact a criminal defense attorney. Rudy, Please, Mindy's voice cracked. We can talk about this. We can. Security will escort you both out, Rudy interrupted, his tone dismissive. Your personal items will be shipped to your attorney's offices. As security personnel appeared at the doorway, Sam entered with a bottle of champagne and crystal flutes. The contrast was stark. While Cameron and Mindy were led away, their empire in ruins, Wagner Analytics team began to assemble. Bobby Yates raised his glass in a toast. To the new king of Boston tech, Jerome Fisher grinned from his seat, clearly satisfied with his investment's return. North of $100 million and climbing. Not bad for a software developer, wouldn't you say? The champagne flowed as Rudy's team celebrated their victory. Young Bird discussed upcoming SEC proceedings with Jeanette, while Rita Hayden outlined their public relations strategy for the merger announcement. Bernadette Short, now officially part of Wagner Analytics, shared insights about Douglas's international operations. Sam approached his friend, holding up his glass. Was it worth the wait? Rudy surveyed the room, his room now. The company he'd built had not only survived, but had grown strong enough to devour the very predators who'd once dismissed him. His platform, combined with Douglas Technologies' infrastructure, would transform the industry. Some people mistake kindness for weakness, he replied, thinking of the long nights, the careful planning, the silent patience. That's their last mistake. The aftermath played out exactly as he'd orchestrated. Cameron faced federal charges for his role in the corporate espionage scheme. Mindy was disbarred. Her legal career ended by the very ambition that had driven her to betray him. Years later, Rudy encountered Mindy at a coffee shop in Back Bay. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by department store brands. Time had not been kind to her carefully maintained facade. I'm sorry, she said quietly, almost desperately. I was wrong about you. Rudy adjusted his custom-made suit, the fabric worth more than her monthly salary now. No, you were right about one thing, he replied, his voice carrying no trace of the pain she'd once caused him. I didn't have a future. I had to build it. He left her there, stepping into his waiting Bentley, a testament to the empire he'd built from the ashes of her betrayal. His driver pulled away from the curb, leaving Mindy to watch another man drive away from her. But this time, she was the one left with nothing but regret. In the end, Rudy had achieved more than revenge. He'd proven that success was the sweetest revenge of all. The merger of Wagner Analytics and Douglas Technologies created one of Boston's largest tech companies, transforming the industry landscape. He'd built something lasting, something significant, something that would leave an indelible mark on the world. And he'd done it all without compromising who he was, a man who never forgot, never forgave, and never left a debt unpaid. Epilogue. 5 years later. The federal courthouse buzzed with anticipation as Cameron Douglas emerged from his final appeal hearing. Gone was the confident tech titan who once commanded boardrooms. His designer suits had been replaced by off-the-rack wear, his once perfect hair now streaked with gray. The 3-year legal battle had taken its toll, both financially and physically. Mr. Douglas, any comment on the court upholding your conviction? Reporters called out as he pushed through the crowd. Cameron's lawyer held up his hands. My client maintains his innocence and will be exploring other legal options, but they both knew it was over. The evidence Young Bird had compiled was ironclad. The corporate espionage scheme, combined with securities fraud charges, had resulted in a 5-year sentence and millions in fines. Cameron's passport had been surrendered, his assets frozen, his reputation destroyed. Across town, in a small law office above a Chinese restaurant, Mindy Douglas, now back to Mindy Doherty, sat across from her bankruptcy attorney. The designer handbag she'd once carried had been sold months ago, along with most of her luxury possessions, to pay legal fees. The disciplinary board's decision is final, her attorney explained gently. The disbarment is permanent. Given the extent of the corporate espionage evidence, Mindy stared at her hands, the tan line from her second wedding ring still faintly visible. The criminal charges had been plea bargained down to obstruction of justice and conspiracy, resulting in house arrest and probation rather than jail time. But the loss of her law license, combined with the civil suits from Douglas Technologies' former competitors, had left her financially ruined. Have you considered the job offer in Providence? Her attorney asked. Mindy nodded numbly. A paralegal position at a small insurance firm, the only place willing to hire her despite her notorious past. The salary would barely cover rent on a studio apartment. Meanwhile, Wagner Analytics had become the crown jewel of Boston's tech scene. The merger with Douglas Technologies had created an industry powerhouse worth billions. Rudy's platform, enhanced by Douglas's infrastructure, had revolutionized financial technology. The company now occupied a gleaming tower in the financial district, its logo visible across the city skyline. Sam Nunez, now Chief Operating Officer, stood in his executive office reviewing quarterly reports. The friend who'd once brought coffee to Rudy's cubicle now managed global operations for one of tech's most influential companies. The London expansion is ahead of schedule, he reported during the executive meeting. Asia-Pacific markets are exceeding projections. Around the conference table sat the team that had helped orchestrate Douglas's downfall. Jeanette Ritter had become chief legal officer, her aggressive tactics now focused on expanding Wagner Analytics' global reach. Young Bird headed compliance and risk management, his SEC experience proving invaluable as the company navigated international regulations. Rita Hayden's PR expertise had shaped Wagner Analytics' public image, transforming the hostile takeover into a story of corporate responsibility triumphing over corruption. Bernadette Short, who'd switched sides at the crucial moment, now led their mergers and acquisitions division, her network proving invaluable for further expansion. Bobby Yates, semi-retired but still serving on the board, couldn't help but smile during quarterly meetings. The promising developer he'd mentored had built something beyond even his expectations. Jerome Fisher had leveraged Sterling and Ross's early investment into a legendary success story. Their faith in Rudy's vision had paid off exponentially, making the venture capital firm the go-to destination for promising fintech startups. But it was Rudy Wagner who had truly transformed. The betrayed husband who'd once worked 18-hour days in a cubicle was now a business icon. Profiles in Fortune and Forbes painted him as a visionary who'd revolutionized financial technology. His net worth had soared into the billions, but those who knew him understood that his true satisfaction came from something else entirely. He kept the newspaper clipping in his private office, the article announcing Cameron's conviction, not out of sentiment, but as a reminder that patience and precision were the sharpest weapons in any arsenal. The coffee shop encounter with Mindy wasn't their last. Boston's business circles were small, and paths had a way of crossing. He saw her once at a charity gala, where she'd taken a job passing out name tags. She tried to catch his eye, perhaps hoping for mercy, for some kind of reconciliation. He'd walked past without a glance, his new wife, a brilliant quantum computing researcher, on his arm. Another time, he'd spotted Cameron doing community service, picking up trash along the highway as part of his pre-sentencing agreement. The former CEO had looked up just in time to see Rudy's Bentley glide past. The ultimate victory, though, wasn't in their downfall. It was in the empire Rudy had built from their betrayal. Wagner Analytics had become a launching pad for innovation, its technology reshaping how markets functioned. The company's charitable foundation, led by Sam's wife, funded STEM education initiatives, ensuring future generations would have opportunities to transform their own potential into success. Rudy's office collection included another memento, the wedding ring Mindy had tossed onto their dresser years ago. Not because he clung to the past, but because it reminded him of an essential truth. Some people mistake kindness for weakness, patience for passivity, quiet determination for lack of ambition. His revenge hadn't just been about destroying those who'd wronged him. It had been about becoming everything they'd said he couldn't be. The industry press loved to analyze his success, attributing it to technical brilliance or market timing or strategic genius. None of them understood that his true innovation had been in patience, in building something so strong, so inevitable, that by the time his targets realized the danger, it was already too late to escape. 5 years after the takeover, Rudy sat in his penthouse office, reviewing plans for Wagner Analytics' next expansion. The company had surpassed his original dreams, but he wasn't finished. Success, he'd learned, wasn't a destination but a continuous journey of growth and dominance. Sam entered with their morning briefing. "You saw the news about Cameron's appeal?" Rudy nodded, his attention on the expansion proposals. "Final nail in his coffin. Mindy's leaving Boston," Sam added. took that job in Providence. Apparently, she's living in some studio apartment above a laundromat. Life has a way of teaching humility, Rudy replied, his voice devoid of sympathy. Speaking of teaching, how's the Foundation's new coding academy coming along? The conversation shifted to the future, to building, growing, expanding. The past was useful only as foundation stones for greater achievements. Cameron and Mindy had thought they were writing his story's ending. Instead, they'd only provided the catalyst for his true beginning. The sun set over Boston's financial district, Wagner Analytics' logo illuminated against the darkening sky. In his office, Rudy reviewed reports from their Asian markets, his mind already plotting the next decade's conquests. He'd learned the most valuable lesson of all. True power isn't in quick victories or emotional outbursts, but in the patient, methodical construction of an empire that would outlast any personal vendetta. The company had grown beyond revenge into something more significant, a legacy that would influence global markets for generations. And somewhere in a small Providence apartment, a former lawyer who'd once sneered at a mere software developer watched her ex-husband's latest business triumph announced on the evening news, understanding too late exactly what kind of future she'd walked away from. Success, Rudy had proven, wasn't just the best revenge. It was the only revenge worth pursuing. Everything else was just details in a much grander design. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.